That was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. I am so sorry for this later upload than my usual episode reviews, but there was just so much to go over from this episode of Bleach. This was, I mean, I already knew that this wasn't a chapter within the original Thousand Year Blood War. I had my expectations, but then it just got blown out of the water. Kubo centered this entire episode around Orihime, and then baked so much just symbolism around her character, around Ichigo, his Bankai. Oh my God, that was, talk about out of your seat, out of my chair. My fiance was upstairs. She was like, what's going on? I said, Ichigo's Bankai is what's going on. I mean, what Studio Period and what Kubo, what they put together was just visually staggering. It was staggering. It was stunning to see. I was completely blown away. My expectations have been completely just taken up to another level. And what's funny is that wasn't even Ichigo's true Bankai. But before we get there, let's talk about how we got there. So the episode starts off, and before we get to the throne room, we see Renji. He's catching up with Chad and Ganju. It looks like Renji's going to help them take out these statues. I had higher expectations, I'm not gonna joke, for Renji's character going with Rukia to help out Ichigo and Orihime. I thought I was going to get a little maybe Rukia and Renji team action, but Renji coming to help out Chad and Ganju, I guess that fits what happened in Can't Figure Your Own World. I do need to go back and reread. I'm usually pretty familiar with the events, and I just don't remember Ganju adding Renji a part of his story. So this is a very interesting addition, but I always trust Kubo's vision. However, this chapter or this episode has really nothing in it from any chapter that I can point to. So we just gotta hope and pray that this is not the end for Renji fighting these statues, because this kind of just seems like a cop-out. But outside of that though, we do get to catch up with Jurgam, and we also get to catch up with Ishida. My only real complaint, and this has nothing to do with the animation, the storytelling, is just making it better, which would have been having an entire episode dedicated to what's going on with Jurgam and Ishida, because so many important little tidbits of not only Yhwach's plan with merging all three worlds together, but just also how the Almighty works, and then even Ishida's own development throughout the series. I feel as if we are getting it, but we're missing it because it's always cut in between some of the best action sequences that I have seen in a long time. And with that being said, let's get into the heart of this episode. Ichigo, Orihime, Yhwach, and Rukia. You know something, maybe on second thought, Renji is better off helping out with Chad and Ganju, because Yhwach has crucified Ichigo in the air. There is a ton of symbolism here. First, the circle behind Ichigo and the ice. It reminds me of samsara, the cycle of life and death in Buddhism. The ice represents hell as a stopping point, which we know is currently sealed off in the world of Bleach. Looking at Ichigo in front of the wheel of samsara, in my opinion, it shows the fusion of Western and Eastern religious art, which actually mirrors real Japanese history. During the Tokugawa shogunate, when Christianity was strictly banned, the Danka system was enforced. People had to register themselves at Buddhist temples. Japanese Christians adapted by creating statues of the Buddhist deity Kannon, and within those statues they'll conceal things like the crucifix. You can see a bit of that here, in my opinion, with the symbolism that's being shown. Ichigo crucified, his Zanpakuto can be seen as the sword that cuts through sin, and then right behind him is the wheel of samsara with the ice representing hell, showing a evolution of Buddhism to Christianity. The split between Christianity and Buddhism is vital to Orihime's evolution and her part with fighting back against Yhwach. Fighting to protect the person you love is the ultimate expression of the human heart. The feat of Orihime, bringing herself back from near death while also healing every single wound. No matter how many times Yhwach ran Ichigo through, she brought herself back, she brought Ichigo back, she brought herself back, she brought Ichigo back. She literally fulfills her promise from the Lost Agent arc.
It doesn't matter how bad the injury is. I will heal all his wounds completely.
You cannot kill what doesn't want to die. You cannot kill someone whose purpose is bigger than their own life. Yhwach's growing frustration with Orihime and her power is honestly, in my opinion, just a reflection of Ichigo's own stubbornness. Yhwach's reality is technically a lie. Orihime's reality is the truth, because technically when you think about it, the reality that they're fighting for, the world that they're trying to keep, is the only one that Orihime can approve of, because only in that world is Ichigo the hero that Masaki saw that night when she died. That is the common connection between Orihime and Masaki, Ichigo's mother. The kindness, the smile, the more vulnerable boy who wanted to be a protector but didn't necessarily have all the strength. That truth is the one thing that Orihime sees that no one else sees. Ichigo's strength is pushing him in a direction that is causing him to diverge away from the growth that he had through the Horn of Salvation, charging up his blade with Yhwach's power, waking up someone, Zangetsu, which is technically his mother's power. His mother has protected him technically since her death through Zangetsu and him using Quincy powers technically, and then tapering in his Shinigami Hollow side, all the way down to the Blade is Me. The Blade is Me wasn't Ichigo necessarily getting access to more power, because he did, but it was recognizing where his power came from. That's why Horn of Salvation felt so powerful, because it's the full circle moment of Ichigo finally stepping into his true role, finally getting revenge for his mother, and really shutting down Yhwach with the power that he has always used, but now he has full access to while he has control of his Hollow Shinigami side. Because of his failures with Rukia, because he was not able to accomplish a thing with her assistance. Everything about her assistance and her showing up was all animation flash, looks great. It added nothing to progressing the fight. And not in a bad way, because there's a story being told here. Yhwach sits Ichigo and Rukia down. And while they're having this back and forth battle, the only thing that I notice as a watcher, as a viewer, is Orihime's face reflects the reality of the situation. She has been tanking Yhwach's attacks. She has been bringing herself back. So everything that Yhwach does, she understands the gravity of the situation, and Ichigo, he just simply doesn't get it. But he will get it though, because once again, while on her knees, hands trembling, Orihime is the one to try to shoulder the burdens again, because Ichigo can't get the job done. Rukia's not going to get the job done. So who is going to get the job done? Who is going to reject this world that Yhwach's trying to create, while also still having unconditional love for the most stubborn person in the room? This entire scene is a reverse of what happened against Ukiura during the events of Wako Mundo. Ichigo, he gained access over his hollow powers. He became the king. He figured out who the horse was. But throughout that, starting with the Grimmjow fight, all the way up until the end of Ukiura, the one thing Orihime was struggling with is what she talked about with Hachijin, which is making sure that her powers and everything that she does is a reflection of her reality. It's not as the way things should be, but as the way she wants things to be. She never faltered one time in this fight. So the insecurities that she feels, the weakness that she feels, is not a failure on her own road of development and her failing to grow. This time, the failure is on Ichigo. Ichigo's Ryatsu acting like an eclipse, overtaking the sun as everything fades to black, is showing that yes, he does have control over his hollow, but the power that he's using, this is unfamiliar territory. Ichigo is used to his Quincy power, but his hollow Shinigami form, it's what he's embraced, but it's not everything that he's known. It shows mastery, but you can have mastery over a tool, but it could be the wrong tool for the job. And this is the wrong tool for the job. And Yhwach calls it out, because he says that this form, the power that he's externalizing to Yhwach, it's showing that maybe Ichigo thinks that he doesn't need his friends anymore, that he can do this on his own. And do not misunderstand, this form is extremely powerful. First and foremost, once again, look at Kubo validating the Hellverse movie. A lot of you found me through my He Predicted This video about Yhwach, and you know I brought up the chains in the Hellverse movie. The main villain of Hellverse, he essentially wanted to reincarnate, and as we know, in Bleach, Hell is sealed off. Now I'm going to save a lot of this for the follow-up video that you know I drop in the middle of the week, where we kind of dig a little bit deeper into the powers, but the encroachment process in Bleach has always felt unnatural to me because, one, if Hell is sealed off, and we know from the Hellverse movie that chains are connected to the soul, that means that it is only natural, just like in Buddhism, for a soul to go to hell first, to burn off their karma, then they will reincarnate into another realm. The Shinigami closed off Hell, they took control of the reincarnation process, and now when someone passes away, they have to perform Kanso to release them from their attachment or their chain. However, if it's not done before the encroachment, they turn into a hollow. Ichigo in the Hellverse movie, in his hollow form, is able to break the chains of Hell. However, the Kusanada in the Hellverse movie, which are designed by Kubo, they lend Ichigo their power. It's gold Ryatsu, and with that golden Ryatsu, he can summon the chains of Hell. We see somewhat a little bit of that in this fight with his, I would say, controlled hollow form. And I am assuming that the gold crimson that we're seeing is just a fusion of all of his Ryatsu colors, where we see the red, the gold, the black, even the blue, because as he fights with Yhwach, we see when his sword in a clash, gold comes out. So all of his Ryatsu colors are reflected. So the gold is there that we would see in the Hellverse movie to connect with these chains. But regardless of how cool Ichigo's new Bankai form is, his controlled hollow form, it's not enough. This isn't the correct path of power for him to overcome this situation. This is a selfish path of power born from his inability to get the job done. And this is where it goes back to Buddhism and Christianity. Ichigo is the Buddha. In Buddhism, there is no God, in the sense that everything that you do is through yourself. In Christianity, however, you put your worries into a higher power. When Ichigo ultimately fails, and everything once again falls right back on Orihime, we see that symbolized here. She's declaring her weaknesses, externalizing the things that she felt has brought this battle down, where she's been inadequate at. She's expressing her concerns, but the power around her through Shunshu and Rika is growing. In this scene, the red, I mean, this had Carrie vibes to it. Forgive me for showing my age on that one. It felt like that, even though it didn't have the same meaning, because the power, the blood, and the way it's just coursing down her face, and she's walking directly towards the center of what's affecting her reality, the center of what's causing her grief. Orihime in her poem expresses that if I were the rain that binds together the earth and the sky, who in all eternity will never mingle, why be able to bind two hearts together? When Ichigo and Orihime cross paths after Yhwach throws him away, you see that there are tears running down Orihime's face, but these tears are essentially covered in blood, and the teardrop that hits Ichigo is covered in blood. What Orihime is sacrificing herself for is to bring out the person that Ichigo should have been. What she's binding together by stating the earth and the sky is the reconnection of Ichigo back to where his power should come from. His mother is the source, not this version of himself that, yes, he has control over, but this is not Ichigo. This is not his Bankai. And where you see the Christian symbolism kick in is first through the teardrop of blood, because it is through her sacrifice and through her tears and through her blood, Ichigo will have another opportunity. We're in new territory with this episode, so what that new opportunity will look like, I'm not 100% sure. But we see Shun Shun Rika turn into the Golden Halo. And then we see it turn into something very, very interesting. You see that 6-pointed star that manifests on Orihime's forehead? Well, in sacred geometry, that's known as a yantra, or in Hinduism, which we know Buddhism evolves from Hinduism, it is known as the Shakkona. The Shakkona represents the Purusha, which is divine energy, and it also represents the Prakriti, which is matter and creation. These two things are always within balance. However, this same symbol is also used to represent the star of creation in Christianity. It also represents the celestial light of the highest ranking order of angels, known as the Seraphim. This week's episode was a 10 out of 10. I don't have anything negative to say overall. The only thing that I want to go back to is Jurgam and Ishida, because I did not really talk about them a lot at all. And that's because they really didn't have a lot going on outside of just having really, really great cutaways to them going back and forth. However, the chef's kiss of this entire episode is the callback to Uryu using the Sanrei glove that he used in the Soul Society arc against Mayuri, where he sacrificed all of his power, but he was able to get the victory and able to survive. But this time, he uses it in a different way, where we find out that Jurgam's version of the Almighty has a 3-second delay. And Uryu figured this out based on how Jurgam was moving. There was a gap in his knowledge about what Uryu was going to do next. Using that gap, and if you've never seen this movie before, I completely understand, but the way he put his arms and his hand around Jurgam's face and mouth, it reminded me of the Tyrese moment from the movie Baby Boy, where I want to say the actor's name, it was Ving Rhames. He comes in and he just chokes him out, and it's like, yeah, call for your mama. That's exactly what that felt like. And then slipping the glove on his hand in the midst of that and then snapping it so it drains all of his power, that was amazing. But that's all for me. This video is way longer than what I normally like to do for these episode reviews, even with the amount of detail that I go into, but there is just so much to cover. And also, I just threw the script away. The more and more I'm getting comfortable talking with you guys, I just like giving you guys who I am in the raw and in the flesh, and this just felt really, really comfortable for me. So if that meant rambling a little bit longer, hey, it is what it is, but we'll get it figured out as we keep growing. Outside of that, I cannot wait to hear what you guys thought about the episode. Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on alerts. I am Zaku Zealot. Peace out till next time.